Welcome to another deep dive. We cover a lot of fascinating figures and stories here, but
Uh-huh.
today's, I gotta say, this
Yeah.
one's pretty out there. We're gonna dive into the world of a self-proclaimed Lord, Timothy Dexter.
Lord Timothy Dexter, a man who lived from 1747 to 1806 and embodies the phrase larger than life.
I mean, where do we even begin with a guy who just declares himself Lord?
Well, our primary source, the Wikipedia entry on him, is a treasure trove
Yeah,
of stories and anecdotes.
it's unbelievable.
It really is.
It really paints a picture of a man who defied expectations and convention at every turn.
Yeah. So our mission today
Okay.
is to unpack how this man, Timothy Dexter,
Yeah.
went from having almost no formal education
Yeah.
to becoming a wealthy businessman.
Yeah.
And we'll look at how his, let's call them eccentricity, quirks, yeah, shaped his life and led him to write a book. It's a very unusual book called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones.
Right.
So for you, the learner, this is a deep dive into a story of unexpected success, unconventional thinking.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
How one person can really leave a mark on history. Maybe not the way they intended, but still a mark.
Exactly.
So where do we start with this guy?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Timothy Dexter was born into a pretty poor family, Irish immigrants in Malden, Massachusetts Bay,
Okay.
in 1747.
So we're talking colonial America,
Yes.
pre-revolution.
That's right. And his family had already been in the New World for about 100 years by that point.
Wow.
Now, Dexter had very little schooling,
Oh, okay.
started working as a farm laborer when he was just 8 years old.
8 years old. I mean, that's barely...
Right. I mean, it's hard to even fathom that today.
Yeah,
But it gives you a sense of the times back then.
absolutely. It puts things in perspective.
It really does. And then by the time he was 16, he was apprenticed to a tanner.
Okay. So learning a trade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in 1769, he made a move that would change his life. He moved to Newburyport, Massachusetts.
All right. So Newburyport, that's going to be a key location in his story.
Absolutely. And this is where things take a turn, a financial turn.
Okay.
In 1770, Dexter married Elizabeth Frothingham.
Hmm.
Now, Elizabeth was a wealthy widow,
Ah.
and he used her money to buy a mansion.
So not exactly the rags to riches story you might expect.
No, not exactly, but a significant leap in circumstance nonetheless.
Absolutely.
But he didn't just sit back and enjoy his wife's wealth.
No.
He set up a business in the basement of his mansion.
Oh, wow. What kind of business?
He was selling all sorts of things: moose hide trousers, gloves, hides, even whale blubber.
Wild blur.
Whale blubber.
But that's a variety of goods.
It really is. And his wife, Elizabeth, she was also running a business of her own.
Okay, so both entrepreneurial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She sold what were known as notions. So basically,
What's a notion?
small everyday items.
Yeah.
Needles, thread, buttons, things like that.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
So they were both quite business-minded.
Yeah. But Dexter's ventures, they were about to take a really strange turn.
They really were. Now, we have to remember, this is just after the American Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And Dexter made a move that, at the time, seemed absolutely crazy. He bought up huge amounts of depreciated continental currency,
Depreciated, meaning it wasn't worth much.
basically worthless.
Okay.
It was trading at practically nothing. The new nation was facing a lot of financial uncertainty,
Sure, yeah.
so his move seemed like a huge gamble.
People must have thought he'd completely lost it.
I'm sure many did. But here's where the incredible luck comes in.
Okay.
At the end of the war, the U.S. government decided to redeem these notes,
Really?
but at a very low rate, like 1% of their face value.
So he still lost most of his money, right?
Well, here's the twist. Massachusetts, where Dexter lived, they decided to pay their own notes at full value.
Oh, wow.
So this disastrous investment suddenly turned into a huge profit for Dexter.
He was in the right place at the right time.
Talk about being lucky.
It's almost too good to be true.
It really is. So now Dexter's flush with this unexpected wealth. What does he do?
Yeah, what does he do?
Well, he really embraces his entrepreneurial spirit. He sets up an export business, trading with the West Indies and Europe.
Wow.
He even acquires 2 ships to facilitate this trade.
Okay, so he's gone from tanner's apprentice to shipping magnate in the blink of an eye.
It's quite a journey.
And it seems like a lot of it was just pure luck.
A healthy dose of luck, that's for sure. But it wasn't just about money for Dexter, was it?
No, what else was he after?
He was also very ambitious socially. He really wanted to be accepted by the elite.
So how do you go about that?
Well, he started petitioning for public office in Newburyport
Over and over again.
constantly.
And how did the local government react to this?
Well, It's believed that they responded with a pretty heavy dose of sarcasm
Okay.
to kind of silence him without outright denying him.
Yeah.
They gave him this grand but totally meaningless title, Informer of Deer.
Informer of deer. What does that even mean?
It's wonderfully absurd,
Yeah.
especially considering
What?
there were no deer in Newburyport.
So it was a completely empty title.
Total made up, just to get him to stop pestering them.
Oh, wow.
But, it says something about how those in power sometimes deal with unconventional people.
Right. Brush them off with humor
Exactly.
instead of actually engaging with them.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So Dexter's got this ridiculous title, but he's still got his business.
Right. And this is where things get even weirder.
Absolutely. We move from the realm of lucky investment into some really peculiar business decisions.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, let's talk about the bed warmers.
Bed warmers.
Yep. He was advised, probably as a joke, by his rivals.
They were trying to set him up to fail, right?
That's likely. They told him to ship a bunch of bed warmers to the West Indies.
Wait, the West Indies? It's like perpetually summer there?
Exactly. A tropical climate. Who needs a bed warmer there?
Nobody.
It seemed like a guaranteed way to lose money.
So did he actually do it?
He did. And this is where fate, or maybe just a really resourceful ship captain, steps in.
Go on.
The captain managed to sell the bed warmers
Really?
as ladles
Ladles. For what?
for the molasses industry.
Molasses ladles made from bed warmers.
You can't make this stuff up.
I mean, what are the chances?
And Dexter made a profit.
Okay, that's one. What other strange business deals did he pull off?
Well, how about wool mittens to the West Indies?
Again with the West Indies.
Seemingly illogical, right?
Totally.
But those mittens ended up being bought by Asian merchants who were there,
Okay.
and they needed them for export to Siberia.
Siberia, where it's actually cold.
Exactly.
So he accidentally tapped into this niche market.
It's amazing. And then there's the classic shipping coal to Newcastle.
Okay, for our listeners who don't know, shipping coal to Newcastle means doing something completely pointless.
Right, like selling ice to Eskimos.
Because Newcastle was already a huge coal-producing region.
Exactly. So probably another prank from his rivals.
So what did he do?
He shipped coal to Newcastle.
Of course he did.
And guess what? He arrived during a miners' strike.
Oh, wow.
There was a sudden shortage of coal.
And he made a killing.
He sold his cargo at a premium price.
This guy's luck is unbelievable.
It really is. It makes you wonder, was there something more to his seemingly random decisions?
Was he secretly a genius?
Well, some people think he actually understood supply and demand in a very unconventional way.
Maybe he just had a knack for finding things that other people undervalued.
That's a possibility. Okay, ready for more. He also shipped gloves to the South Sea Islands.
Gloves to the South Sea Islands.
Yep. More bad advice from his rivals.
But I bet he still made money.
You know it. His ships arrived just in time to sell the gloves to Portuguese boats that were heading to China.
Unbelievable. This guy could do no wrong.
It seems that way. But not all of his ventures were quite so outlandish.
What else did he do?
He exported Bibles to the East Indies.
Bibles.
Yeah, where there was a demand from missionaries.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he shipped stray cats to the Caribbean.
Straw cats. What for?
They were having problems with rat infestations.
Oh,
So even amidst the ridiculous, there were some practical ideas.
Practical and profitable.
Exactly.
So amidst all this business success, what about his social aspirations? Did he finally get the respect he craved?
Well, not really. Despite his wealth, New England high society still snubbed him.
They saw him as what? Uncouth.
Yeah, unrefined, uneducated.
Yeah.
And, early American society had very strict social classes.
Right.
Someone like Dexter, with his background and his, let's say, unique personality, he was never going to fit in with that crowd.
So how did he react to this rejection?
He didn't take it lying down. He bought this huge, ostentatious house in Newburyport.
Hmm?
Nathaniel Tracy. He was a prominent local socialite.
Oh, I see. He was trying to emulate him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he didn't stop there. He went all out with the decorations.
What did he do?
Well, he added minarets to the house, topped it with a golden eagle.
Oh, wow.
And get this, he built himself a mausoleum in the garden.
A mausoleum. While he was still alive.
While he was still alive and kicking.
That's a statement.
It certainly is. And the garden itself, it was a spectacle.
What did he do to the garden?
He filled it with 40 life-size wooden statues of famous figures.
Okay, like who?
George Washington, William Pitt, Napoleon, Thomas Jefferson, the list goes on.
And I bet he included himself in that lineup.
Of course.
Oh.
His statue had this inscription: I am the first in the East, the first in the West, and the greatest philosopher in the Western world.
Talk about an ego.
He wasn't exactly lacking in self-confidence.
No kidding. But his attempts to be recognized didn't stop at Newburyport, did they?
No, he also bought an estate in Chester, New Hampshire.
And what did he do there?
He basically went full lord mode. He insisted on being called the Earl of Chester.
Really?
He even offered rewards to people who addressed him by that title.
He was serious about the self-proclaimed lordship.
Absolutely.
Mm.
But while he was projecting this image of wealth and power, his personal life was a bit more complicated.
In what way?
Well, his relationship with his family, particularly his wife, it was, let's just say, unusual.
How so?
He would often tell visitors that his wife, who was very much alive,
Yeah.
was dead, and that the woman they saw was her ghost.
I can't even imagine how his wife must have felt.
It must have been incredibly strange and unsettling for her.
And then there's that whole episode where he faked his own death.
Oh yeah, that's a classic Dexter story.
So he staged this elaborate death.
He did.
And how many people came to his fake funeral?
It said that around 3,000 people attended.
3,000 people? That's a huge crowd.
It is. And apparently Dexter was watching from hiding to see how people would react.
So what happened when he revealed the hoax?
Well, he was furious with his wife because he didn't think she was grieving enough.
Oh,
And according to the accounts, he physically abused her with his cane.
that's awful. It's a pretty disturbing side to his personality.
It really is. It shows a darker side to his eccentricities.
It's a reminder that these larger-than-life figures are still human, with flaws and complexities.
Absolutely. So we've talked about his business ventures, his social ambitions, his personal life.
Right.
But what about his legacy? What did he leave behind?
Well, he wrote a book, didn't he?
He did. A Pickle for the Knowing Ones.
Yeah.
Or, as it's also known, Plain Truth in a Homespun Dress.
Published in 1802.
Right. He was 50 years old when he wrote it.
And what was the book about?
It's essentially a collection of his complaints about politicians, the clergy, his wife.
No surprises there.
But the real story is the style of the book.
It's famous for its lack of punctuation.
That's one way to put it.
No.
8,847 words,
Yeah.
33,864 letters, almost no punctuation whatsoever.
And the spelling.
Unorthodox, to say the least.
He didn't exactly follow the rules of grammar.
Not at all. It's like he just wrote down whatever came into his head.
I've seen excerpts. It's pretty wild.
It is. And he signed his name at the end of each chapter like it was a letter.
So what was the reaction to this book? Did people think it was nonsense?
Surprisingly, no. The book became quite popular. Yeah. It was initially given away for free, but then it was reprinted 8 times.
People were fascinated by it.
They were. It was this completely unique voice. Unconventional, but captivating.
So what happened when people complained about the lack of punctuation?
Well, Dexter being Dexter, he didn't actually add punctuation to the text.
What did he do?
For the second edition, he added an entire page of punctuation marks at the end,
Just a page of commas and periods?
basically.
Yeah.
And he told readers to pepper and salt it as they please.
Oh, wow. He basically said, you figure it out.
Exactly.
So what was the overall contemporary view of him? Was he seen as a shrewd businessman? A lucky fool?
It was a mixed bag. Some people definitely thought he was unintelligent.
His obituary even said something about his lack of intellectual endowments.
Not very flattering. But Dexter also tried to shape his own legacy.
How did he do that?
He paid a local poet, Jonathan Plummer, to write verses praising Lord Dexter.
He was trying to control the narrative.
He was. But when he died in 1806, his estate was valued at over $35,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
It is. The equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars today.
So regardless of what people thought of him, he was undeniably successful financially.
There's no denying that. So what happened to his grand house in Newburyport after he died?
It was eventually auctioned off.
Along with...
His furniture, those famous gilt balls he had on the property, and a lot of the garden statues.
What about the rest of the statues?
Most of them were toppled by a huge storm in 1815, the Great September Gale.
Oh, wow.
The few that survived were sold off or even used as firewood.
So his grand vision didn't exactly stand the test of time.
No, not really. But a few of the statues did survive.
I read that less than 6 of the original 40 still exist.
That's right. They were rediscovered during the Great Depression.
Wow. And the most famous one, the statue of William Pitt.
It was restored by the Smithsonian.
And now it's at the Museum of Old Newbury.
That's pretty cool. It's like a little piece of his eccentric world has been preserved.
It is. There were also 2 figurines called Peace and Plenty.
I remember those.
They were put up for auction a few years ago, but they didn't sell.
Nobody wanted a piece of Dexter's legacy.
Not at the seller's asking price, anyway.
So what about the Timothy Dexter house itself? What happened to that
Well, for a while, it was an inn.
after he died?
Yeah, after his widow, Elizabeth, passed away.
Okay.
Then it went through a few different owners. But in the 1980s,
Yeah,
a man named William Quill bought it and started restoring it.
that's great. It's good that someone cared enough to preserve it.
It is. But tragically, just as the restoration was almost finished,
What happened?
there was a fire.
Oh, no. Was it a total loss?
Luckily, they had the original blueprints,
Oh, that's good.
so they were able to rebuild it exactly as it was.
So the house still stands today.
It does. Still in private hands, though.
Okay.
But it's a reminder of Dexter's life and his impact on Newburyport.
And speaking of his impact, they did name a street after him,
Dexter Lane.
right near his old house.
And there's actually a plan to build affordable housing on that street.
So in a way, his legacy lives on.
It does. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Lord Timothy Dexter,
What have we learned? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's a story about defying expectations, about achieving success, even if it comes in the most unexpected ways.
He didn't follow the rules, but he still made his mark on the world.
Exactly. It makes you question what we even mean by success and intelligence.
Right. Maybe those definitions are too narrow.
Maybe. Because here's a man who was dismissed by many,
Yeah.
but he built a fortune. He wrote a book that people still talk about today.
And he left behind a legacy that continues to intrigue and inspire.
It makes you wonder, what other unconventional paths to success are out there? What are we missing by clinging too tightly to tradition?
Those are great questions for our listeners to ponder.
I think so. Maybe there's a little bit of Timothy Dexter in all of us.
Yeah.
A willingness to challenge the norms and forge our own path.
And who knows, maybe we'll stumble upon our own unexpected successes along the way.
You never know. That's the beauty of it.
Well said. That's Lord Timothy Dexter for you folks. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds open to the possibilities.
Keep learning.
Keep learning.